The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide and tall, hundreds of seats filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some had fur, some had scales, and some had skin that glowed with strange colors. They all sat in their special chairs, made to fit their different bodies. The air hummed with translation devices that turned every language into every other language. Ambassador stood at the speaking platform. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone. His people had ruled a dozen star systems for over 1,000 years. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of that power. "The humans are weak," he said, his words echoing through the hall. "They call it kindness, but we know better. They are soft, and softness has no place in the galaxy." Many heads nodded in agreement. The military commander made a sound like grinding metal, his people's way of laughing. "They helped us rebuild our cities after we tried to invade them," he said. "What kind of warrior helps their enemy?" Dr. Sarah sat in the human section, her hands folded in her lap. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Around her sat the other human representatives, all listening to the familiar words they had heard so many times before. The trade minister spoke next. Her voice sounded like singing, but her words were sharp. "The humans gave away the cure for the Red Plague for free. Free. They could have made billions of credits, but they gave it away. This is not business sense. This is stupidity." More sounds of agreement filled the hall. Species after species stood to tell similar stories. The humans had ended wars when they could have sold weapons. They had fed the hungry when they could have let them starve. They had saved the dying when they could have let nature take its course. Sarah remembered each story. She had been there for many of them. She remembered the children who lived because human doctors worked for free. She remembered the peace treaty between signed only because human diplomats spent 3 years talking to both sides. She remembered the outer rim colonies that survived the great storms because human ships brought food and medicine. But today, like every other day for the past 20 years, these acts of kindness were spoken of as weakness. Raised his hand for silence. "The humans cannot make the hard choices," he said. "They feel too much. They care too much. In a galaxy where only the strong survive, they choose to help the weak. This makes them dangerous to galactic stability." Sarah almost smiled at that. Dangerous because they helped others. She had heard worse accusations. The representative stood up. He was shorter than most beings in the hall, with dark fur and bright yellow eyes. "My government proposes that we reduce human voting power in this council," he said. "They have proven they cannot think clearly. Their emotions cloud their judgment." The vote came quickly. Sarah was not surprised when it passed. 347 votes in favor. Only 12 against, all from species that humans had recently helped, and even some of those had voted to reduce human power. As the council members filed out, many avoided looking at the human section. Some nodded politely, but their eyes were cold. A few of the younger representatives looked uncomfortable, but they said nothing. Sarah gathered her papers slowly. Ambassador from the delegation walked past her. He had fought in the war where humans saved his. Now he commanded ships that protected interests across 3 sectors. "You could have taken everything from us," he said quietly, stopping beside her chair. "When we invaded Earth's colonies, you could have destroyed us completely. Instead, you rebuilt our cities better than they were before." Sarah looked up at him. He was massive, with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms. Even whispering, his voice was deep as thunder. "Why do you let them call you weak?" he asked. "Because," Sarah said, standing and facing him, "they need to believe we are weak. It makes them feel strong." I stared at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his large black eyes, but he said nothing more. He turned and walked away with his delegation. Sarah made her way to the transport bay. Her ship, a small diplomatic vessel, waited among the larger and more impressive ships of other species. Some of those ships carried weapons that could destroy planets. Others carried armies that could conquer star systems. The human ship carried only Sarah and her small staff. As her ship lifted off from the council station, Sarah looked down at the massive structure. It had been built with human engineering help after the old council building was destroyed in the war. Human architects had designed it to be beautiful as well as functional. Human gardens grew food that fed all the species who could not eat the same things. Human medical bays treated anyone who got sick during the long council sessions. But today, that same council had voted to make human voices count for less. Sarah's assistant, a young man named David, sat beside her in the passenger area. "Doctor," he said, "why don't we ever fight back? When they insult us, when they ignore our help, when they take everything and give nothing, why don't we say something?" Sarah closed her eyes and leaned back in her seat. She thought about the question she heard from more and more humans every year. Young diplomats like David, military officers who won battles and then watched their enemies mock them for showing mercy. Doctors who saved alien lives only to be called weak for caring. "Because, David," she said, "once we stop caring about them, we become something else. Something they might not like nearly as much as they think they would." David frowned. "What do you mean?" Sarah opened her eyes and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were delivering medicine to plague victims. Human engineers were fixing broken space stations. Human soldiers were protecting colonies that belonged to species who had just voted against them. "They think our compassion is a weakness they can exploit," she said. "They have no idea that our compassion is the only thing protecting them from us." The ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying them back toward Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its business, secure in the knowledge that humans would always be too soft, too kind, too weak to be a real threat to anyone. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. 3 months after the council vote, the first attacks began. They came without warning, striking 12 human colonies at the same time. The hegemony had planned well. Their ships appeared from hyperspace in perfect coordination, targeting not military bases or defensive stations, but hospitals and schools. Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the HMS Valiant, watching the battle unfold on his screens. The enemy dreadnought they were fighting had just destroyed a medical transport ship full of sick children. The transport had been clearly marked with medical symbols. It carried no weapons. The hegemony ship had destroyed it anyway. "Target their engines," Torres ordered. "Disable them." His weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Riley, turned in her chair. "Sir, they just killed 300 sick kids. We should end this." "Disable them," Torres repeated. "We are not like them." The Valiant's weapons struck with perfect accuracy. The enemy ship's engines exploded, leaving it floating dead in space. Standard procedure said Torres should finish the enemy vessel. Every other military in the galaxy would have done exactly that. Instead, Torres did what humans always did. "Send medical teams to their ship," he ordered. "Check for survivors." Riley's hand stopped moving over her controls. "Captain, they murdered children, our children." "And if we murder their people, how are we different from them?" Torres asked. "Send the medical teams." The rescue took 3 hours. Human doctors and engineers worked to save soldiers who had been trying to kill them minutes before. They pulled 43 enemy crew members from the wreckage. Some were badly hurt. Human medics treated them all with the same care they would give their own people. The rescued soldiers were taken to the medical bay of a human station. They received the best treatment available. Human doctors saved lives that would have been lost. Human nurses stayed up all night making sure the enemy soldiers were comfortable. The hegemony responded by sending a video message to their rescued soldiers. The message was broadcast on all channels so everyone could see it. In the video, a commander ordered his own people to execute the most badly injured soldiers. The reason was simple. They had accepted help from humans, which the hegemony called showing weakness. The executions happened on camera. Soldiers shot their own wounded comrades while human doctors watched in horror. The message was clear. This was what happened to anyone who was saved by human compassion. The video spread across the galaxy in hours. Everyone saw it. Everyone understood what it meant. On Earth, Director General Emma sat in her office deep underground in Geneva. The office was simple, with white walls and a desk that had belonged to 7 leaders before her. Behind her desk hung a picture of Earth taken from space, showing the blue and green world that humans called home. Was reading reports from across human space. The pattern was clear and terrible. Every species that humanity had helped was now either silent or actively supporting the hegemony. The whose humans had rebuilt after they tried to invade human colonies, had pledged 3 battle fleets to help the hegemony. They had cut off all trade with human worlds, even though human medicine had saved their species from plague just 5 years ago. The government had expelled all human medical teams from their territory 2 weeks ago. They called the humans unwanted foreign influence. This was the same species that had begged for human help when the plague was killing their children. The same species that would have gone extinct without human doctors working for free. Had been Director General for 8 years. She had seen humanity save 17 different species from complete destruction. She had watched human soldiers die protecting alien worlds that meant nothing to Earth. She had signed orders sending human food ships to starving colonies, while human families went without luxuries to pay for it. In return, humanity received insults, accusations of weakness, and now open warfare from species they had saved. Her aide, Colonel Martinez, knocked on her door. "Ma'am, we have the casualty reports from the Beta Sector attacks." "How many?" she asked without looking up from her papers. 14,000 dead so far, mostly civilians. The hegemony specifically targeted evacuation ships and medical facilities. Closed her eyes. 14,000 people dead because humans were too weak to be taken seriously, too soft to be respected, too kind to be feared. She thought about Captain Torres, still rescuing enemy soldiers who would probably be executed for accepting human help. She thought about human medical ships rushing toward plague-stricken worlds whose governments had already announced they would arrest any human doctors who arrived. She thought about human diplomats trying to negotiate peace with species that laughed at human weakness. "Colonel," she said, opening her eyes, "send a priority message to every human military commander, colonial governor, and diplomatic station in the galaxy." "What should the message say, ma'am?" Turned to her computer and began typing. Her fingers moved slowly but steadily. Each word was chosen carefully. When she finished, she read the message once more, then sent it. The message was short. Directive 777. Effective immediately, all humanitarian aid operations are suspended. All peacekeeping deployments are recalled. All non-essential diplomatic contact is terminated. Human ships will respond to attacks with proportional force only. Human resources will be used for human interests only. This directive remains in effect until further notice. Colonel Martinez read the message on his tablet. His face went pale. "Ma'am, this changes everything. We have medical ships heading to plague zones, peacekeepers stopping a war in the Outer Rim, diplomats negotiating food shipments to starving colonies." "Yes," said, "and every one of those efforts is being done for people who consider us weak for doing them, people who support our enemies, people who would cheer if we were all dead tomorrow." "But ma'am, people will die, millions of people." Stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of Geneva. Somewhere up there, human ships were already receiving her message. Somewhere up there, the galaxy was about to learn what humans looked like when they stopped caring. "Yes, Colonel," she said. "People will die. The question is, should they be human people or alien people? Because the aliens have made it very clear that both cannot survive." The message went out on quantum communication channels to every corner of human space. Within hours, human medical ships turned around and headed home. Human peacekeepers abandoned their posts and returned to human space. Human diplomats packed their bags and left alien worlds. Captain Torres received the message while his medical teams were still treating soldiers. He read it twice, then called his officers to a meeting. "New orders," he said simply. "We're going home." Lieutenant Commander Riley looked confused. "What about the wounded enemy soldiers in our medical bay?" Torres looked at the message again. For the first time in his career, he felt something that scared him. Relief. Relief that he no longer had to save people who would try to kill him tomorrow. Relief that he no longer had to show mercy to those who showed none. "Transfer them to their own people," he said. "What happens after that is not our concern." The age of human compassion was ending. The galaxy had demanded strength without mercy. They were about to receive exactly what they had asked for. 6 weeks after Directive 777, the first signs appeared. The plague had returned to the outer rim worlds, spreading faster than anyone expected. It was the same disease that human doctors had wiped out 15 years ago, working for free and asking nothing in return. The government had thrown out the human medical teams just 2 months earlier. Their leader had made a speech about unwanted foreign influence and independence. Now their people were dying again, and their own doctors had no idea how to stop it. Dr. Sarah sat in her new office on Luna Station, reading the desperate messages from space. As Earth's former representative to the Galactic Council, she had been recalled when Directive 777 went into effect. Her replacement was not human at all. The new representative was an AI construct called Diplomatic Unit 7. It had no emotions, no feelings, and no interest in helping anyone unless that help served human interests. When the government sent their plea for medical aid, the AI's response was mathematically perfect. Request analyzed, no strategic value to human interests, no trade benefits offered, no military assistance provided in current conflict. Request. The message was sent back to space in under a minute. No discussion, no negotiation, no compassion. Set down the tablet and looked out her office window at the Earth below. She could see the blue and white ball that held 6 billion humans, all of whom were learning to live in a galaxy that considered their kindness a weakness worth exploiting. Her assistant brought her more reports. Human colonies that once welcomed refugees with open arms now processed asylum requests with cold efficiency. Each case was judged only on what benefit the refugee could provide to human society. Those who offered nothing were sent away. The refugee ships were turned back at human borders, ships full of families fleeing war zones that humans had once helped to end. Ships carrying children who would have been fed and housed and educated in human schools just weeks ago. Now they drifted in space, unwanted by anyone. Had worked in diplomacy for 30 years. She had seen humans make terrible sacrifices to help alien species. She had watched young human soldiers die protecting alien worlds that meant nothing to Earth. She had signed treaties that gave away human advantages because it was the right thing to do. Now she watched humans learn to be practical instead of kind. The change frightened her, but she understood why it had to happen. Her communication system chimed. Admiral Foster was calling from the front lines where human forces were still fighting the hegemony. His face appeared on her screen, older than she remembered, with new lines around his eyes. "Doctor," he said, "I need to tell you about what happened yesterday." "Go ahead, Admiral." "We found a hegemony ship attacking a civilian transport. The transport was carrying families, refugees from a war zone, the same who voted to reduce our council power, the same ones who pledged ships to help the hegemony." Waited, she could see something heavy in the Admiral's expression. "In the old days we would have saved them," Foster continued. We would have driven off the hegemony ship and escorted the refugees to safety. Yesterday, we watched the attack happen and did nothing. The ship was destroyed. Everyone on board died. What did your crew say? Asked. Nothing. That's what scares me. They watched hundreds of people die, people we could have saved easily, and nobody said anything. Nobody argued. Nobody even looked uncomfortable. Foster paused, then added, I think we might be changing into something we don't recognize. After the call ended, sat alone with her thoughts. She pulled up news reports from across the galaxy. Without human mediation, 3 new wars had started. Without human aid ships, 2 more plagues were spreading unchecked. Without human peacekeepers, old conflicts that had been frozen for years were heating up again. The worst part was how quickly everything was falling apart. Humans had spent decades carefully building peace, trade agreements, and mutual defense treaties. All of it was collapsing in weeks because no one else wanted to do the hard work of caring about others. Her door chimed. Come in, she called. Ambassador from the delegation entered. He looked tired and smaller than she remembered. His 4 arms hung at his sides in a gesture that meant sadness in his species' body language. Doctor, he said, I need to speak with you about something. Of course, please sit. Lowered himself into the chair designed for his large frame. My government is reconsidering our alliance with the hegemony, he said. Oh, why is that? Because, he said slowly, we are beginning to understand what we have lost. Waited for him to continue. In the old days, when there was a crisis, we knew humans would help. We could plan around that. We could count on it. Human ships would bring food, medicine, engineers. Human diplomats would work to stop wars before they spread. Human soldiers would protect innocent people even when those people could not pay for protection. A's large eyes met hers. We called it weakness because we were strong enough that we did not need it. Now we are learning that we were only strong because you were taking care of the things we chose to ignore. I see. My people are starving, Doctor. Not because there is no food, but because the trade routes are breaking down. Pirates attack our supply ships because there are no human peacekeepers to stop them. Disease spreads because there are no human doctors to contain it. Wars start because there are no human diplomats to prevent them. Felt something cold in her chest. What do you want from me, Ambassador? I want to know if there is any way to undo what we have done. Any way to convince your people to go back to the way things were. Was quiet for a long time. Outside her window, she could see human ships moving in formation around Luna Station. Military ships, not medical ships. Warships, not rescue vessels. Ambassador, she said finally, you taught us that compassion was weakness. You taught us that caring about others made us easy to exploit. You taught us that only the strong survive in this galaxy. Yes, said quietly. We learned your lessons very well. We are no longer weak. We are no longer easy to exploit. We are becoming very good at surviving. And the rest of us? Turned to look at him directly. The rest of you are learning to live in the galaxy you demanded. A galaxy where only the strong survive. A galaxy where compassion is weakness. A galaxy where everyone takes care of themselves and no one else. Stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. We thought we wanted strength without mercy, he said. We thought we wanted logic without emotion. Now we know what that looks like. And what does it look like? Asked. It looks like the end of everything good. After he left, sat alone in her office. On her desk was a picture of her granddaughter, smiling and holding a flower she had picked in one of the human gardens on Geneva Station. The little girl was 8 years old and had never seen war, hunger, or disease because humans worked to keep those things away from innocent children. Wondered what kind of world her granddaughter would grow up in. A world where humans had learned to be practical instead of kind. A world where human ships carried weapons instead of medicine. A world where the galaxy had gotten exactly what it asked for. She hoped they would all live long enough to regret it. 1 year after the silence began, the galaxy was burning, not with the clean fire of war, but with the slow burn of civilizations breaking down. Trade routes that had operated peacefully for decades were now. Colonies that had thrived under human protection were now ghost towns. Medical research that had been freely shared was now locked away behind military secrets. The hegemony celebrated what they called their greatest victory. They had proven that human compassion was indeed weakness. They had shown the galaxy that mercy was for fools. Their leaders made speeches about how they had awakened the galaxy to reality. The reality was 17 wars that humans had once prevented. The reality was 3 billion refugees with nowhere to go. The reality was entire species dying from diseases that human medicine could have cured in weeks. But the hegemony was drunk on their success. They had beaten the soft humans. They had forced the most powerful military in the galaxy to change their ways. Now they wanted to make sure humans could never go back to their old weakness. The target they chose was perfect. Geneva Station orbited Earth's moon, a beautiful structure that served as a research facility and cultural center. It had no military value at all. No weapons, no soldiers, no strategic importance. It was exactly the kind of place that the old humans would have defended because it was innocent. The station housed 3,000 researchers and their families. They studied better ways to grow food, cleaner sources of energy, and cures for diseases that affected species across the galaxy. Even during the silence, their research was still being shared with anyone who asked for it. Old habits died hard. Doctor's granddaughter, Emma, was visiting the station with her school class. They were there for the annual Young Scientists competition, where children from across human space presented their projects. Emma had built a model of a water purification system that could work on any planet. She was 8 years old and wanted to help make sure no one ever went thirsty. The hegemony attack came without warning. 12 warships appeared from hyperspace and began firing immediately. They targeted the residential sections first, then the schools, then the research labs. They broadcast a message as they fired. This is what happens to weakness. This is what mercy gets you. Doctor was on Luna Station when the attack began. She watched on her screens as the ships tore Geneva Station apart piece by piece. She tried to reach Emma on the communication system, but there was no answer. The battle lasted 6 minutes. Human defense ships arrived too late to save anyone. By the time they reached Geneva Station, there was nothing left but debris floating in space. 3,000 people dead, among them Emma and her entire class. The human response began 18 minutes after Geneva Station died. It was not the response of the old humans, who would have been angry and sad and desperate for justice. It was the response of the new humans, who had learned that mercy was weakness and that weakness got people killed. Admiral Foster coordinated the attack from his flagship. He had been thinking about this possibility for months, planning what humans would do if someone crossed the final line. The hegemony had just crossed that line. The first target was the hegemony's home system. 12 human ships dropped out of hyperspace around the. They did not target military bases or government buildings. They targeted the planetary computer network that controlled everything from power systems to food distribution. The attack took 30 minutes. When it was over, every computer on every hegemony world had been wiped clean, not damaged or broken, completely erased. Banking systems, transportation networks, communication grids, power plants, water treatment facilities, all of it gone. The hegemony ships that had attacked Geneva Station tried to fight back, but they discovered their weapons would not fire. Their computer systems had been infected with a virus that humans had been perfecting for months. The virus did not destroy the ships, it simply made them unable to hurt anyone ever again. Within 72 hours, the hegemony had ceased to exist as a space-faring civilization, not because they had been conquered, but because they had been reduced to a pre-industrial society overnight. Their ships floated dead in space. Their cities went dark. Their people were suddenly cut off from the technology that had allowed them to build an empire. The humans did not occupy hegemony worlds. They did not steal hegemony resources. They simply left the people alone on their planets with Stone Age technology and no way to threaten anyone else ever again. Admiral Foster sent a single message to the former hegemony territory. You wanted to see what strength looked like without mercy. This is what it looks like. The rest of the galaxy watched in horror. They had spent decades laughing at human weakness, never imagining what human strength would look like without that weakness to control it. They had demanded that humans be more practical, more logical, more willing to do what was necessary. Now they saw the result. Humans were indeed very practical. They had solved the hegemony problem in the most efficient way possible. They could no longer threaten anyone because they could no longer reach the stars. Emergency sessions were called in every galactic government. The same leaders who had mocked human compassion now desperately tried to contact Earth. They offered apologies, reparations, treaties, anything that might convince humans to show mercy again. But human diplomatic channels remained closed. When responses came at all, they came from AI constructs that had no interest in forgiveness or second chances. Ambassador A made one final speech to what remained of the Galactic Council. Half the members had stopped attending after their own conflicts made travel too dangerous. The other half sat in a hall that felt empty and cold. We demanded strength without compassion, he said to the nearly empty chamber. We insisted on logic without mercy. We got what we asked for. Now we see what we have lost. He gestured to the empty seats around him. Where are the humans who once sat here and listened patiently to our complaints? Where are the human ships that once carried medicine to our sick? Where are the human diplomats who once spent years negotiating peace between our peoples? The hall was quiet except for the hum of the life support systems. They are gone, A continued. We drove them away. We told them their compassion was weakness and they listened. Now we live in a galaxy shaped by our wisdom, a galaxy where the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. He looked around at the few remaining representatives. We got exactly what we wanted. I hope we can live with it. On Earth, Director General read reports from across human space. The transformation was complete. Human colonies that once welcomed refugees now turned them away at the border. Human ships that once carried medical supplies now carried only military equipment. Human soldiers who once protected alien civilians now protected only human interests. The change had taken less than a year. It had been easier than anyone expected. Humans, it turned out, were very good at not caring when they put their minds to it. Thought about Doctor's granddaughter, who had died because the galaxy thought human mercy was weakness. Emma would never grow up to help purify water on distant worlds. She would never become the kind of person who made the galaxy better just by existing in it. The galaxy had traded away every Emma it would ever have for the promise of strength without weakness, hoped it was worth it. She had a feeling it would not be. 5 years after the silence began, humanity ruled the galaxy without conquering a single world. They did not need armies to occupy alien planets. They did not need governors to control alien populations. They simply stopped caring about anyone else, and that indifference had become the most powerful force in known space. The transformation was complete and terrible in its efficiency. Human fleets moved through space like clockwork, protecting only human interests. When pirates attacked human ships, the response was swift and final. When pirates attacked alien ships, humans did nothing at all. The galaxy had learned to solve its own problems or live with the consequences. Dr. Sarah, now Director of Human External Affairs, worked from an office that had once belonged to the Minister of Galactic Relations. The old title had been abolished. Humans no longer had relations with the galaxy. They had policies, procedures, and mathematical calculations about what served human interests. The office itself reflected the change. Gone were the cultural gifts from grateful alien species, the artwork celebrating friendship between worlds, the photographs of human diplomats shaking hands with alien leaders. The walls were now white and clean, decorated only with charts showing human economic growth, military strength, and territorial expansion. The expansion happened naturally. When alien civilizations collapsed, their abandoned colonies and space stations were simply claimed by humans who could use them. No force was necessary. The previous inhabitants were usually dead from war, disease, or starvation problems that humans had once worked to prevent. Assistant announced that the morning's delegation had arrived. Representatives from 17 different species waited in the conference room, asking for an audience with human leadership. It was the largest group of alien diplomats to visit Earth in 3 years. Entered the conference room to find beings she recognized from her old days at the Galactic Council. They looked older now, worn down by years of managing crises that humans had once helped them avoid. Ambassador A was there, representing what remained of the territories. The trade minister sat beside him, her singing voice now cracked with exhaustion. Even they had sent someone, though their government barely functioned anymore. Director, A said, standing and making the gesture of respect that his people used for superior powers. Thank you for agreeing to see us. Please sit, said, taking her place at the head of the table. What can humanity do for you? The delegates exchanged glances. They had prepared for this moment, but actually asking felt impossible. The minister spoke first. Director, our governments have authorized me to offer humanity complete authority over galactic governance. No more councils, no more votes, just human leadership, with humanity making all major decisions. Made a note on her tablet, continue. We are also prepared to offer massive reparations for our past treatment of human representatives, added. Material compensation, territorial concessions, preferential trade agreements, whatever you consider appropriate. In addition, the representative said, his voice barely above a whisper, we formally acknowledge human superiority in all matters of diplomacy, science, and military affairs. This acknowledgement would be written into our laws and taught in our schools. Finished writing and looked up at the delegation. These are generous offers. What do you want in return? The silence stretched for a long moment. Finally, A spoke the words they had all come to say. We want you to care again. Set down her tablet, explain. We want human medical ships to return to disaster zones, the minister said. We want human peacekeepers to stop wars before they spread. We want human diplomats to mediate disputes instead of letting them become conflicts. We want, A said, his voice breaking slightly, to go back to the way things were, when humans helped us because it was right, not because it was profitable. The representative leaned forward. Director, my people are dying from the same plague your doctors cured decades ago. We have tried everything, but we cannot match human medical knowledge. Our children are dying, and we know that human medicine could save them in days. Looked around the table at faces that showed desperation, grief, and something that might have been shame. These were the same beings who had mocked human weakness, laughed at human mercy, and voted to reduce human influence in galactic affairs. Let me make sure I understand, said. You want us to return to providing free medical aid, free disaster relief, free military protection, and free diplomatic services to species that have contributed nothing to humanity in return. Yes, I said. You want us to care about your wars, your plagues, your famines, and your political problems as much as we care about our own. Yes. You want us to risk human lives to protect alien lives, spend human resources on alien problems, and show mercy to alien enemies. The delegation nodded as one. Was quiet for a long time. Outside the conference room window, she could see the lights of New Geneva, the city that had been built to replace what the hegemony had destroyed. It was beautiful and efficient and completely human in its design. "You are asking us to be weak again," she said finally. "No," I said quickly. "We are asking you to be strong enough to be merciful, strong enough to care about others, strong enough to be the people you were before we taught you to be like us." Smiled, but it was not a kind expression. "You taught us well, Ambassador. You taught us that compassion is weakness. You taught us that mercy is exploitable. You taught us that only the strong survive in this galaxy." "We were wrong," the minister whispered. "Were you? Look around this room. 5 years ago, every one of your governments was stronger than they had been in decades. You had solved your refugee problems by making refugees someone else's responsibility. You had avoided costly wars by letting humans mediate them for free. You had prevented plagues by relying on human medicine. Stood and walked to the window. Now you handle your own problems, you fight your own wars, you cure your own diseases, you take care of your own people. Isn't that what you wanted?" "We thought it was," I said. "We thought we were strong enough to take care of ourselves. And now? Now we know that we were only strong because you were carrying our burdens for us. We thought your compassion was weakness because we were too weak to be compassionate ourselves." Turned back to face the delegation. "You want to know humanity's final position?" They nodded. "You taught us that compassion was weakness. We learned that lesson perfectly. We are no longer weak. We are no longer exploitable. We are no longer the people who care more about alien children than human interests." Sat back down at the table. "We are what you made us, strong, practical, and completely focused on human survival. We will never again risk human lives for alien gratitude that lasts only until the next crisis." The representative began to cry, a sound like wind through broken glass. "But our children are not human children," said, "therefore not our concern." The delegation sat in stunned silence. Finally, I asked the question they were all thinking. "What will it take? What can we do to convince you to show mercy again?" Considered the question seriously. "Nothing," she said. "There is nothing you can do. You broke something in us that cannot be repaired. You taught us to be like you, and we are very good students." As the delegation prepared to leave, his personal assistant entered the room. It was Emma, not the Emma who had died at Geneva Station, but her surviving cousin, also named Emma after her. This Emma was now 13 years old, and she had grown up in the world that the delegation's choices had created. "Grandmother," the girl said, "the transport is ready to take our visitors to their ship." Nodded. As the aliens filed out, young Emma watched them with curious eyes. When they were gone, she turned to her grandmother. "They were crying," she said. "Why?" Looked at the child who carried her dead granddaughter's name. This Emma had never known the old world, where humans helped others simply because it was right. She had grown up knowing only the new world, where humans helped only themselves. "They want something from us that we used to give for free," explained. "What?" "Care, concern, compassion for people who are not human." Emma frowned, thinking about this strange concept. Why would we care about aliens? They're not our people. The question hit like a physical blow. This child, raised in the world they had created, could not even understand why someone would care about the suffering of others. "No reason," said quietly. "There is no reason at all." "Good," Emma said, satisfied with the answer, "because caring about people who aren't us sounds like a waste of time." After Emma left, sat alone in the conference room. Through the window, she could see human ships launching from Earth's orbital stations. Military ships, cargo ships, colony ships, all carrying humans to human destinations for human purposes. The galaxy had gotten exactly what it asked for. They had demanded strength without weakness, logic without emotion, and policies without sentiment. Humanity had learned those lessons perfectly and completely. Now the galaxy lived with the consequences: wars that no one mediated, plagues that no one cured, famines that no one relieved, suffering that no one else cared enough to stop. Thought about her first granddaughter, Emma, who had wanted to help make sure no one went thirsty. That Emma had died because the galaxy thought her grandmother's compassion was weakness. The galaxy had been wrong, but they had learned the truth too late. Human compassion had not been weakness. It had been the only thing holding civilization together. Now that compassion was gone forever, and with it, the galaxy's hope for anything better than an endless cycle of power and revenge. The aliens had taught humanity that caring was weakness. Now they would spend the rest of their history discovering what strength without caring actually looked like. They would not enjoy the lesson.